Hey everyone, this is the Tinnitus Virtual Summit 2020. We are here today with Hazel Goedhart, who is the co-founder of Tinnitus Hub. Tinnitus Hub is a nonprofit organization, online community, and blog which focuses on awareness and research. Hazel is also the co-founder of Tinnitus Talk, which is the online support forum and can be found at tinnitustalk.com. My name is Ben Thompson. I am an audiologist in California, and I'm the host for the summit. I wanted to ask Hazel first how COVID-19 has affected individuals with tinnitus in your community.
Hi, Ben. Thanks. Nice to be here. So one of the things we do is create a podcast on tinnitus, which is also called Tinnitus Talk, just as the forum that we run. Our latest episode was about COVID-19 and how people have been affected by being in quarantine. We see some people struggling more with their tinnitus being quarantined because you do have fewer of those, distractions that you can normally get from going outside and interacting with people. Some people have found it quite claustrophobic and harder to find distraction from their tinnitus. But then again, that's also where we as an online community can come in, right? So people can tend to then flock more to those online resources for help and find the support they need from other people who are struggling with tinnitus through, for instance, the Tinnitus Talk support forum.
Thank you. And the Tinnitus Talk support forum is the largest online support forum for individuals with tinnitus. So,
correct.
Would you be able to tell us a bit about when and why you started Tinnitus Talk? And then you can transition into the slides that you prepared. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So I didn't start it myself. It was started by Marco Vesala, my colleague. He started everything back in 2011. So he felt when he got tinnitus initially and was struggling a lot, he felt there wasn't really a good place for people to come together online. There were some existing forums and there were Facebook groups, but he felt like they were lacking the focus that he was looking for, where it's not just coming together and complaining about your tinnitus, but also being proactive and following the research news and treatments, what's actually available in terms of treatments, and coming together and collaborating on projects and doing awareness raising and things like that. So it's kind of grown over time into a lot more than just a forum. It's really an online community of people who, what they have in common is that they're all to some degree struggling with their tinnitus, but they're really coming together to hopefully make a change. That's in the end what we want, is for people who are suffering from tinnitus to be taken seriously, and ultimately what we want is a cure. So we got to work together for that.
Yeah, thank you. I've been on the forum and I've seen the community coming together, and I've seen the discourse, because for someone who is looking for those initial resources for acute tinnitus, maybe they've had it for weeks or months, to be able to talk and chat with someone who's had it for years and is maybe on the other side of the hardest part of their journey. That's a great relationship to build. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's very important. And we do have, luckily, also people who used to struggle a lot and have gotten better, although they might still struggle, right? But they've definitely sort of gotten into a better place. And luckily, some of them stick around to help others and interact with others, or they stick around for the camaraderie, or they stick around because they want to keep following the research news, or so that's really great. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll just share my screen.
Looks good. Take it away.
Right, yeah. So I want to talk a bit more about the power of an online community and what we can achieve when we come together as tinnitus patients, people suffering from tinnitus. So, oh, sorry, I lost my slides for a second. Yeah. I would start actually by asking anyone who's listening or watching this whether they're happy with the existing treatments and care for tinnitus. If you are, then probably you're not going to get much out of my presentation, but if you are not, then well, we feel the same way. We feel that unfortunately there's still a prevailing perception among doctors, researchers, the general public, that tinnitus is not really that bad, and that it might be true for some people. We know, of course, there are people who live with their tinnitus quite well, but we shouldn't forget there are actually millions of people out there who feel completely debilitated, or are completely debilitated by their tinnitus, and it's for those people that we really desperately need a cure, and we want people to be taken seriously and not to be told like just to get over it. So I'm actually seeing your video, Ben, sort of projected onto my slides. Wait, I have to see if I can move that. Okay, yeah, got it. I'll continue. So how do we plan to achieve this? We want to bring people suffering from tinnitus together, connect them, because, you know, we can learn from each other and help each other, and together we can stand strong. We want to provide lots of reliable information on research, on treatments, so that people actually know what is the status quo, what is available, and what we still need. We need more effective treatments. We want to also build a bridge between patients and researchers. That's very important to us, so that we can really drive research in a direction that actually meets the needs of people with tinnitus. And we just want to generally raise awareness on that unmet need that still exists. Yeah, so who are we? We're Tinnitus Hub. We're a nonprofit. We are a global entity, so we're not tied to any particular country. We function almost completely online, you know, and at the core of what we do is this online community called Tinnitus Talk, which has now over 30,000 members, and we have a couple of million visitors per year. We're completely impartial, we're non-commercial, we're run by volunteers, all of whom have tinnitus themselves. So I'm also a volunteer. I'm doing this next to my day job, and we're completely grassroots. So really, you know, you become part of this community and you help to determine our strategy. So what can we offer to people who are struggling with tinnitus? Well, we would urge you to join us and become part of the vibrant Tinnitus Talk community. So the main thing we offer is the Tinnitus Talk support forum itself, which you can find at tinnitustalk.com, where you can get peer-to-peer support, so talk to others who really understand what you're going through. Contrary to some other online groups such as Facebook groups, we are very clearly structured. So if you want to get support, you go to this part of the forum. If you want to read about new research, you go there. If you want to read about specific treatments, you go there. If you just want to have a chat, there's another section. So it's much easier to find what you're looking for. You can learn a lot from others about various topics, and also meet experts occasionally. There's opportunities to ask questions and engage directly with experts, healthcare professionals, researchers. But you can also get involved and really, actively participate in some of our projects. We always have a lot of projects going on, and we're trying to rally volunteers to get involved. So one example is recently there was a US government agency that is responsible for funding amongst other things, hearing related research, and they had an opportunity for the public to provide input on what kind of research they'd like to see funded. So we got a working group together of Tinnitus Talk members who put together an information package that all the other members could then use to give feedback to this government agency so that we could urge them to spend more money on tinnitus related research. So this is just one example of, you know, how people on the forum can get together and collaborate on projects to really make a change. And signing up to the Tinnitus Talk forum is completely free. Yeah, I want to also touch on the fact that I think online health related forums have kind of a bad rep. We hear a lot from people that, oh, my doctor told me to, you know, I should stay away from forums. Don't go there, it's bad for you. And you know, we think the reality is that Tinnitus Talk fulfills a need that exists because healthcare for tinnitus is insufficient. People have to go somewhere, right, to get help. And in fact, and we've done a survey amongst our members, only 9% of our members said they perceived negative effects from being there. And so I think, you know, if you're going to be obsessively scouring the internet, it's probably generally not healthy or a good idea, but mostly people actually get a lot of benefit from being part of Tinnitus Talk. The other myth, I think, is that forums are full of doom and gloom. I would say that yes, there is room for expressing yourself when you're struggling, when you're suffering. I think it's important that there's room for that. There's, you know, venting can also serve a purpose, but we fulfill many other needs as well. Like I said, people come, you know, to stay up to date on research. People come for the camaraderie or to help others. And actually 92% of our users say that they don't find the content too negative at all. And also there's a misperception that forums are full of misinformation. We think misinformation is unfortunately everywhere. We know that a lot of doctors even don't know that much about tinnitus and can give wrong advice, unfortunately. And we see that a lot of patients actually turn into experts. They become the tinnitus experts. And 94% of our users have found advice they received from peers on the forum very helpful. Although 29% did say they find sometimes the advice can be conflicting. So person A says this, person B says that. I'm not sure what to believe. And for that reason, we are also working on providing more objective, evidence-based information that will also be accessible to all of our members and users. So we offer a lot of free resources. I mentioned already the Tinnitus Talk podcast. The podcast is doing quite well. Actually, some of our episodes get over 50,000 listens, which I think is really good for a niche topic podcast. And we've released, I think, 10 episodes so far. A lot of them are research focused. We want to really keep people up to date on latest in research, but some are also more focused on like patient stories, tinnitus management, that kind of thing. We also publish frequently videos. We have a whole video series that we just concluded, which we filmed last year. Last year I went to the Tinnitus Research Initiative conference in Taipei. I was there as I think the only tinnitus patient, and we came with a camera and I interviewed lots of researchers, and we've now have, I think, 18 videos up where you can, and each of them showcases the work of a particular researcher in like 5 to 10 minutes. So it's really quick and easy way to get an overview of what's going on in tinnitus research. And yeah, like I said, we're continuously working on content, and we'll have a lot more coming up. Another area we're passionate about, besides the Tinnitus Talk forum itself, we actually engage a lot in research. So one way we do this is by gathering data. data is one thing that's really lacking in tinnitus research at the moment. It's one of the obstacles to, finding a cure. So we conduct periodic surveys where we ask members and users to respond. And we've done a couple of big ones that received over 5,000 responses. The last one we did actually was close to 8,000 responses. For academics, for researchers, that's like a treasure trove of data, which they could never get by themselves. So that's where we can really add value. And we always share that data freely with any qualified researchers, and it's led to already quite a few academic publications. Another way we're involved in research is by attending research conferences and events, partnering in research consortiums, and working directly with researchers, basically, where we really see it as our role to represent the patient voice and tell researchers that this is what people suffering from tinnitus want from you. This is the kind of research they want. And generally speaking, it just means pushing it into a very clearly cure-focused direction. Yeah, and finally, in the future, coming few years, we want to keep doing what we're doing. We're passionate about it. We want to do a big overhaul of the website and provide even more and better resources for people with tinnitus. We want to be even more ambitious in our data gathering attempts, and maybe even build our own tinnitus database. Like I said, I think big data is really what's needed to push research forward. And we want to promote more patient-driven tinnitus research by, for instance, what we recently started doing is having members of the Tinnitus Talk forum vote on what is the best publication of the past month. Say which of these publications do you find most interesting or useful, and then we share that we'll be sharing those insights with the research community so that it can steer their research in, like I said, in a patient-driven direction. We put together a patient expert panel who will be directly consulting and advising researchers, and again making recommendations to improve tinnitus research. And that will be a key focus for us in the coming years. And we'll just keep working on, like I said, keep doing our part to contribute to ultimately finding a cure for tinnitus, and to support people who are struggling, and make them be taken more seriously, because it isn't the case that everyone can just easily learn to live with tinnitus, and that's an important message that we want to get out there.
Thank you, Hazel. We enjoyed the presentation. And as you stop sharing your screen, I'll ask you to please give your comments on the current status of research for a cure. Are there any research projects that are currently developing that you're very excited about that you think our audience should know?
Well, so what we see is that actually the most promising avenue of research at the moment is in hearing regeneration. So there's a lot of work both in academia and by commercial companies being done to restore our hearing, either through regenerating hair cells or regenerating nerves in the ear. And that seems to be very promising, although, it still requires, they still often have to go through the clinical trials, and it has to be tested, etc. So it's not something we'll see on the market like next year, but it's probably coming. And if indeed we can restore people's hearing, then that will help a lot of people with tinnitus. But unfortunately, on the other hand, it probably won't help everyone with tinnitus, because tinnitus, as you probably know, can have many different causes. Hearing loss is one of them, but there can be other causes. So it will probably help a subset of tinnitus patients. But ultimately, then what we still need is to find treatments that target the tinnitus itself, right? And that is the big challenge. And research in that area is still quite in its infancy. There's a lot of obstacles still to overcome. One of them is that there's no unified theory yet of how tinnitus is actually generated in the brain. There's a lot of different theories, but there's no one a model that everyone agrees on. So if we don't know exactly how it's generated, then how can we treat it, right? So that's one challenge. Another challenge is that there's no objective marker for tinnitus. So there's not a test that you can do that objectively identifies this person as having tinnitus. That's one of the reasons that pharmaceutical companies are generally hesitant to invest in tinnitus research, because how can you measure whether a treatment is successful if you don't have an objective measurement for tinnitus? So that's something, some researchers are working on that, but that's a breakthrough that is needed. Another challenge is that a lot of research being done is on animals. So we have animal models for tinnitus, but they often don't translate well into human models. So there's kind of all these obstacles still to overcome. And there's the fact that tinnitus is actually not one condition, but probably different conditions. There's the research community in the past few years talks a lot about subtyping, the need to identify different categories of tinnitus patients. And it's quite likely that those different subtypes will require different types of treatments. So there's a lot to be done, but there is progress being made. If you look at the tinnitus research field today, there's probably a couple of hundred people around the world who are really focusing their research efforts on tinnitus. And 10 years ago, that was only like a handful or so. Having said that, it's very much underfunded. If you compare tinnitus research with, let's say, research into other health conditions that have a similar socioeconomic burden, then, if, for instance, depression or diabetes, not to compare any of those conditions directly, I'm just saying in terms of socioeconomically, they could be compared. But tinnitus receives a fraction, like 1/20th or so of the funding that those fields do. So those are definitely still big obstacles to overcome.
Thank you, Hazel. And it's very clear that the work you're doing with Tinnitus Talk, Tinnitus Hub is benefiting all of us in the tinnitus community, from the patients to the healthcare providers and the researchers. So thank you guys for that work. And it's great that it's a nonprofit as well. So I have one last question for you. What is something new that you've learned about tinnitus in the past year?
Yeah, when you send me your questions beforehand, that was the one that I kind of struggled with. So my answer is, it's not going to be something that's really new, but where my thinking has kind of evolved, I would say. And that's the fact that tinnitus exists on a spectrum. And one person's tinnitus is not another person's tinnitus. And it's something I knew pretty much from the beginning, but I've only in the last year by interacting with many people with tinnitus, right, or the members of our Tinnitus Talk forum, I've really come to understand that it is such a different condition for different people, and that there really is this spectrum of severity. And so I think we have to be very careful with making statements like, oh, other people have gotten better by just having a positive mindset, so therefore you can too. I don't think it works that way. Some people just, their tinnitus is just so intrusive that they can't just learn to live with it. And I think that's an important realization. And I think we have to be careful of over-promising and creating an impression that the existing treatments, which are mainly, let's be honest, they're psychological treatments that help people cope, but they don't get rid of the tinnitus, right? And I think we have to be very wary of creating an impression that that's good enough, because it isn't good enough for everybody. So yeah, that's something I've really come to realize more and more.
Yeah, thank you for that. And with that, using the tools that we do have, whether that's questionnaires or different types of objective quantifiers for the psychological coping that can help us be more targeted with certain subgroups who have tinnitus. So thank you, Hazel Goedhart from TinnitusTalk.com, which is an online support forum as well as a nonprofit organization that's doing all sorts of work related to research and support for tinnitus. Thanks so much for being here, Hazel. And thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you check out the other videos and presentations in the Tinnitus Virtual Summit. Hazel, I'll give you the last words here before we stop the video.
Oh, just thanks for inviting us. And I just want to urge anyone who's listening who wants to be part of our online community and help us make a difference, just sign up to tinnitustalk.com.